it's just so special for our club, mate, our club.
Lastly, after 57 years of pain, it's coming home.
Hey there, TJ here, and welcome to Yeah The Dees, where I'm going through our disappointing loss to Fremantle on Saturday the 27th of May 2023 in round 11 of the AFL season. Yeah, very disappointing to not come out with this one. We definitely had enough opportunities to get a win on the board, but our inefficiencies with our kicking, our forward structure, and a few things like that just really sort of got in the way. Quite disappointing. We had to do this game without Lachie Hunter, with him getting suspended, and Clayton Oliver also obviously injured with that hamstring, going to miss this game and the Carlton game, it seems, and be back for King's birthday. This is our second game without Clayton Oliver in 6 years. He has been quite resilient considering how much he gets bashed around in that midfield, and he's still able to get up for games, apparently pushing really hard for the Carlton game, but he's been ruled out by Simon Goodwin this week. But that's probably enough about that game there. Let's have a quick look at the team selection before getting into the game. So with Clayton Oliver and Lachie Hunter coming out, James Harmes and Tom Sparrow come back in. Tom Sparrow coming back in from suspension, and James Harmes getting his first game at AFL level in quite a while. So I felt like the team was okay. I'm still, feeling very nervous about our back line structure being a bit too short. I think we really need that third tall there, but I will get more into our problems and how we can maybe fix some things up to not lose these winnable games as we go through the game. So the game kicked off, and our best quarter for pressure is definitely in this first one. We really seemed switched on at the start of the quarter and were able to get quite an amazing goal through Cozzy Pickett to start off the game. It got a great bounce over the defender. Yeah, look, Cozzy's probably a little bit lucky with that bounce, but great for him to get that goal on the board early. Unfortunately, we gave away two very silly free kicks for Fremantle to get 2 goals on the board early. Jai Amiss barely got touched at all and got a push in the back. It was an awful free kick. And for this Bailey Banfield one, there was they got an inside 50 from a 50-metre penalty, which was just absolutely rubbish. There was also, obviously, Luke Jackson getting his first possession in this quarter, which got a very mixed response from our faithful. Some people clapped and cheered, some people booed. Personally, I just sat there and just didn't really react either way. It's hard to sort of decide which way to go. I'm very disappointed about him leaving. It's very understandable if you're going to get a 4-year deal at $900,000 a year. If that's true, that's what the rumours have been. For him to go home and work, and it's, footy's a job. That's sort of how it is, as much as I'm sure he would have liked to have stayed if you were working interstate and another business offered you, a role paying you triple what you're getting paid to go back to your hometown and work there. I'm sure everybody would take that offer every time. So I can't really be angry at him for taking that, and but I am upset with sort of the way that he kind of stuffed us around through the year, being very, very vague. But I guess, when you're that young, you probably fear the confrontation of having to, deal with that at the club level with management and things like that. And from some of the stories I've heard, like, he seems just a little bit of a space cadet, like he's a little bit clueless around that sort of stuff. It is what it is. People are welcome to clap him because he was a premiership hero and helped us, and people are welcome to boo him because they feel slighted by him leaving. And I support both parties in being able to express themselves both ways. But yeah, I was a fence sitter for that one. I just didn't really react either way, and definitely got more upset with him as he started to dominate the game in that third quarter. But of course, that's the way it is. I turned to my brother and I said, what's the bet this is going to be like when Jeff Farmer went to Fremantle and this bloke's going to win the game for them? And it kind of turned out that way a little bit. I felt like his goal in that third quarter was pretty vital. But let's just move on with it. Brodie Grundy took a great mark in our forward 50 and landed on his head. I was glad to see that he was all right. Unfortunately, James Harmes hit the post with his opportunity here. We really dominated this second half of this quarter, but unfortunately didn't quite get the reward for effort other than T-Mac and Bailey Fritsch both getting on the board. We were much better than them in defence. They only got their 2 goals basically from free kicks. We really dominated that quarter but didn't capitalise as much as I would have hoped. We kicked 3-2-22 there, 2-0-12, leading by 8 points at the end of that quarter. And our pressure rating was at 200 for that quarter compared to Fremantle's 177. So absolutely smashed them in pressure, really came to play. But yeah, just couldn't really put more score on the board. And there was just, a few mistakes here and there. Second quarter, we saw Fremantle really sort of start to get on top and they started to get a little bit of reward for their efforts. Unfortunately, Bailey Fritsch kicked a point. There was that moment where him and Spargo crashed into each other, and that was something that I kind of saw throughout the game. It just seemed like we weren't talking to each other. People weren't really understanding. Multiple times, 2 or 3 people would fly for the same ball and end up spoiling each other rather than one of them staying on the ground. A bit of selfishness has seemed to creep into our game, and we're not seeing that selflessness that we saw in 2021 that really helped us become successful in handing that off and looking at closer options rather than trying to play hero ball and bite off a bit more than we can chew. We over-possessed the ball, looking for that perfect shot on goal, which I feel is kind of similar to a way a lot of teams play soccer. They really try to edge the ball into the box and then get that perfect shot on, where really they should just be, putting the goalkeeper under pressure and cracking it in. And that's what I think that we should be doing. We should be snapping the ball a bit more rather than trying to connect 3 or 4 little handballs to get a 2% gain on the shot on goal. It just doesn't really seem worth it, because every time you go to hit up another target, you're almost a 50-50 chance in it getting intercepted or not taking that mark, and it's just better to just throw it on the boot and go for it. But yeah, a big turning point in this second quarter was actually Sean Darcy getting injured and then getting subbed out, because that created an option for Luke Jackson to go and play the role that suits him the most, and that's in the main ruck role. So that didn't help us at all. It would have been probably better for us throughout the game if they had to juggle him through that. With Luke Jackson going into the middle, gave them a bit more run out of the centre, and they were able to capitalise in the second and third quarter with 2 centre clearance goals. James Harmes able to get on the board later in the quarter with a goal, and Brodie Grundy had another chance, but unfortunately kicked it behind there. A lot of pressure from Fremantle in that game. Their pressure gauge score was 198 and ours dropped from 200 to 164. So 180 is average, 200 is elite, and we dropped well below that. Felt like our defense was doing okay, but they were able to kick 2 goals, 3-15 to our 139, and it just would have been a lot nicer if we had have gotten one of those points on the board. And there was also an out of full during that quarter as well. So we lose that quarter by 6 points and go into the half 2 points up. And then we enter the third quarter, which was Fremantle's best quarter, and pretty much a flick opposite in the pressure gauge of the first. Jai Amiss was able to get the first goal of the quarter, and then Jack Viney was able to immediately bounce back with our second goal from the centre bounce clearance. Nice to get that one back and hopefully sort of try to pull back some momentum. But it was Fremantle that were able to get the next one with Michael Frederick, who I felt was pretty well held for most of the day. Brodie Grundy then finally gets on the board with a goal. I'm really happy with his work up forward and his work around the ground. I think Brodie's been doing a great job. Just his connection with his hit-outs to the midfield isn't really working, and I feel like this might be a good opportunity to just bring up what's happening, I feel, in those centre bounce clearances. I think we're setting up a little bit too offensively in those centre clearances, and when we don't get a direct hit out to advantage, it puts us at a huge disadvantage, and we're a step behind the Fremantle players when they're running out of that stoppage by being too attacking. And I thought maybe bringing in James Harmes and Tom Sparrow back into that mix along with the Jack Viney, they would be playing a bit more defensively, but it just didn't really seem to be the tactic there. We seemed to set up really, really aggressively, and those hit outs, like we doubled them in hit outs, yet the centre clearances and the stoppages are basically breaking even because those hitouts aren't really going to advantage. So I really hope that we can tighten up that connection. And if we tighten up that connection with the hitouts, then we'll get our movement out of the centre back to being dominant like we were. But yeah, Josh Tracy getting a goal there as well. Bailey Fritsch unfortunately scoring a behind after Sam Switzowski also missed. And then Luke Jackson got that goal in the third quarter, and that really felt like Fremantle were getting their momentum and getting on top, and Caleb Sarong sort of topped that off with another goal in that third quarter. So unfortunately, not a great quarter for us. We had a pressure rating of 178 to Fremantle's 200. They kicked 5 goals, 232, and we kicked 2 goals, 315. And I referenced the first quarter there because we had the opposite amount of pressure in that quarter, but still had, because we kicked 3-2-20 in that first quarter, but Freo go on to kick 5-2 in this one, and they were just a bit cleaner. We kicked 2-3-15 in that quarter. So Freo won the quarter by 17, and we go into the last quarter up by 15. So we're definitely behind the 8 ball there, but we did start the quarter very well, and Bailey Fritsch was able to get the first goal off of the fourth quarter, but we weren't really able to capitalise after that. Fremantle got a few chances there. Lockie Schultz kicking a goal, and then Jacob Van Rooyen and Tom Sparrow teaming up back-to-back goals. It felt like, okay, maybe we're going to get this momentum and run over it. I felt like, we were doing enough right and giving ourselves enough opportunity throughout the game, but just didn't really make the most of those forward 50 entries. And then, Jai Miss kicks his third. We have a couple of chances here with Cozzy and Jacob Van Rooyen. Unfortunately missing. Cozzy finally gets that goal, but we can't capitalise any further with Banfield kicking a goal and just making that stretch just a little bit harder for us. And then Angus had a chance at the end to bring it back to 2 points, but missed, unfortunately. And then that's the game. We end up losing by 7 points to a fairly plucky Fremantle, who took advantage of quite a few of their chances. Yeah, there was a good little period where they missed sort of 3 shots on goal in a row, and they probably could have tried to extend that margin. But just our inefficiencies in the forward 50 were really noticeable in this game. Just overusing the ball, handballing it a bit too much. And then I feel like our defense has been put under a lot of unnecessary pressure by going a bit too small. And we need another taller defender there. Like if May gets brought up the ground and stuck on the mark, which happened a couple of times, we're a tall defender short in that defensive 50. And, Jai Amos was able to take a mark in one of those situations after Stephen May was left up on the half flank covering the mark. So we really need another tall defender. I know a lot of people are scared of bringing Tomlinson in after he had that shocking game against Essendon, but a lot of players had a shocking game against Essendon, and he's absolutely killing it in the VFL at the moment. We need somebody in there that's going to help free up May and Lever, because they're being stretched and it's way too tough on them because now they're doing too much other than just their role. And having that third tall really helps them focus on what they're good at. Like there's been a lot made this week over Lever and May's intercepting, and that's because there's other players coming in and doing that for them. Like Trent Rivers was quite good at intercepting this week, as was Michael Hibberd. But that also stretches Michael Hibberd as to not only just working on one of the more dangerous smaller forwards, but now he's having to become an interceptor as well. And he's such a fantastic player, and I can't believe he's playing at this higher level this deep into his career. But imagine if he had a bit of relief. I just really feel like when you've got Salem, Rivers, McVeigh, Bowie, and Brayshaw all running through that back line, you've got too many of the same. I think you can only really play 2 or 3 of Salem, Rivers, Bowie, and McVeigh. One of them has to go for a taller defender in that back half. If one of our taller defenders is getting beaten by someone, we have some flexibility to roll them around. I don't think Jake Lever's having that bad of a year, as some people are suggesting. Yeah, he's dropped a couple of marks and doing things like that, but I feel like that's because of the pressure that's been put onto them since moving Petty forward. And now that Petty's injured, you can't just bring him back in and put him in defence. So whether it's a Tomlinson or a Disco Turner or someone else, somebody needs to come in to fill that role again. I also feel like we need to rebalance our small forwards a little bit. We're not really getting enough out of Cozzy, Chandler, Spargo at the moment. Alex Neil-Bullen's definitely doing his role every week. He had 9 tackles on the weekend, put on plenty of pressure. And whilst he has 1 or 2 howlers a game, as I mentioned last week. He's playing his role, but we need those smaller forwards to really be locking it into our forward 50 and putting on those forward 50 tackles, because they're just not getting enough disposals as well. They're not spreading enough, and that's something that we really need to do. We need to spread and switch the ball and open up the ground rather than just constantly playing down the wing. Like, we need to switch which wing we're playing down and play down Langdon's wing instead of where Hunter usually is or where Brayshaw was this weekend. I feel like the Jacob Van Rooyen, Tom McDonald combination isn't really working, and JVR's had a couple of down weeks, so I'm not sure whether he goes back and just plays a game at VFL and bring Ben Brown in now that he's a bit fitter. But yeah, I think something just needs to happen there just to change something up with our forward line, and also really make it clear that two people shouldn't be jumping at the same ball. There's so many times I saw it on the weekend where we were jumping at the same ball and spoiling each other, and it's just ridiculous. We can't keep spoiling each other, getting in each other's ways, not talking. This is all the sort of stuff that we weren't seeing this stuff in 2021. We can't be our own worst enemy, because it's just going to get in the way of winning these sort of easy games. We should be 9-2. We should have won those last 2 weeks, but instead we're 7-4. Lost a game that I didn't think we should have on the weekend. So yeah, that's sort of pretty much my thoughts on how we could sort of fix those things. We really failed to capitalize on our defensive half scoring chains. We only got 2-5-17 for the entire match, when usually we average 40.8 points. Also, yeah, our set shots on goal were really poor. We kicked 4-7-31. So we've been really good at that stat this year. Been kicking really, really well besides the last 2 weeks. So maybe that's a bit of fatigue for the season. A lot of teams do have a dip around this time in the season. We've seen it with St Kilda as well. We've seen it with Geelong having a bit of a dip. There was 4 very wild results on that Saturday, but I don't think it's too much to worry about. Carlton this week, Collingwood, then we finally get our bye, and we've got a 8-day and a 9-day breaks in between that, so the players should be able to get a good rest. Fremantle had a few more disposals, but they were kind of kicking the ball around in their back half a bit more than us. We had a few more inside 50s. But yeah, our disposal efficiency really, really poor for this match at 65.6%. Symptom to their pressure being on us. Our efficiency inside 50 was a lot better, and theirs was worse. Just shows how good of a defensive game Stephen May, Michael Hibberd, Trent Rivers and all that had. Free kicks pretty even, but my God, the umpires were pretty bad both ways this game, and yeah, definitely gave Freo a couple of goals for nothing. But yeah, as I mentioned before, this is a big discrepancy, 56-28, and to have that break down into very even clearances, centre clearances and stoppage clearances, makes me very disappointed, because we should be dominating with these midfielders and ruck combination with them connecting, but they're not connecting to advantage, and that's what's most disappointing. See, we won contested possession. So when the ball was up to be grabbed, we won it more than them, and that is a good stat to be in, but it was our efficiency with the ball after that was very, very poor. Marks inside 50 were pretty even, but yeah, we weren't kicking well towards goal. Tackles inside 50, very happy with that number, but yeah, unfortunately just getting balls up and not holding the balls, and not really getting free kicks inside our forward 50, which was a bit sad. Christian Petrarca driving the ball for us again, another 30 disposals for him. He definitely made a difference every time he was in the middle. Jack Viney, solid game, 352. Brayshaw, 498. Grundy, 321. Langdon, 305. Alex Neilbull, 288. Tom Sparrow had a fine game as well, 18 disposals, 274. But yeah, 9 tackles for Alex Neilbull and 7 for May, Salem and Harms. Tom Sparrow on 6. 35 hit-outs to Max and 20 to Brodie Grundy. Clearances, Petrarca with the 8-5 for these guys here as well. The coaches' votes look like this. I was kind of surprised to see Christian equal top with Luke Jackson. I thought Luke was probably best on ground for the second half. Really helped Fremantle with their drive through there. And then I was also interested to see Max get some votes as well. I thought he was good in the first half, but really dropped off after. But yeah, that means that the coaches split the votes up like this. 5 votes now, and I gave Alex Neilbull the 1 vote for his pressure and tackling around the ground. Gave 2 votes to Trent Rivers, who was always desperate to try and intercept the ball and create some drive. Gave 3 to Tom Sparrow, who put on some great pressure through the middle of the ground. Was really desperate throughout the game and Gave 4 votes to Christian Petrarca, who, whilst sort of breaking even in the midfield, was our player that gave us most drive, most clearances. A few of his inside 50s could have been a bit better, but he was definitely our best midfielder for the game. Gave 5 votes to Stephen May, because we would have been scored on a lot more without him, and gave the 6 votes to Michael Hibbert, who played another fine game in defence and helped rebound a lot outside of our defensive 50. Onto the VFL scores, and I am really, really annoyed at this being scheduled at basically the exact same time as the AFL game, because I didn't get to watch it live. I like to watch the VFL live. I always find it really enjoyable to see how the players are developing or how players are coming back from injury. But unfortunately, it was played at the same time as our game for some reason, which is really confusing, because you'd think that maybe they would do it at a separate time so that the fans of the team can go to both games if they would like to. But yeah, that wasn't the case. It was a very closely contested game for 3 quarters, and then just the dam wall broke and Werribee just sort of kicked away in this second half of this last quarter. But a very even contest throughout it, lead changing quite a few times throughout it. Kai de Claes, who used to be on the Melbourne list, plays for Werribee, was able to kick a goal. Adam Tomlinson with the most disposals on the ground, with 29, 25 of them being kicked, so he had a huge amount of the ball. The Casey midfielders, Mitch White and George Gray, were pretty decent through the middle. Rowan Steele as well. Ben Brown just got the 1 goal but took 7 marks throughout the game, had 19 disposals. Tajwa Woden had 18 and was apparently pretty good. Jake Melksham has been suspended for a week after a hit on the ground. So it was originally a 2-match ban, but he has taken an early guilty plea, so he will be unavailable for selection this week. So if you're looking at all the conversations on Demon forums, on Facebook and social media, you'd think we'd be 4th last and not 4th top on the ladder. Yeah, we've had 2 close losses in a row, probably games that we should have won. But what I find really interesting is that we're 3 wins behind Collingwood, but still have a better percentage than them. So we're in a pretty decent position. We just need to really, knock off Carlton, really put up a good showing against Collingwood the week after that, and then have our break and take on the second half of the year, really assess at what we're doing wrong, and hopefully we get that big, tall third defender back. There was an interesting interview on AFL 360 with Christian Petrarca yesterday. It was pointed out to him that we're 13 and 12 in the last 25 games, and he wasn't aware of that statistic and was quite surprised about it. And it just shows how almost oblivious these players are, because they're just focused on the job and doing it week by week. But of course, there's people like us that really analyze these things as a whole and, scrutinize their careers and performances, and we see it as a danger sign to be a 50-50 team in that long, or at least that's what the narrative that the media are trying to drive, is that, maybe our premiership credentials aren't that high. And I don't think it's panic stations yet. I think the media just need to, put out some articles. We're 7-4. It's not awful. And over the years, there's been a handful of teams that have gone on to win the premiership after finishing with 7 losses. Richmond won the 2017 flag with a 15-7 record. Bulldogs won the 2016 flag with a 15-7 record. The Swans in 2005 had 15-7, and Brisbane back in 2003 had a 14-7-1 record. If you think about how good that Brisbane team was, are you surprised that they didn't win 8 games? Good teams still lose, and they were all very good teams in those years. The only team that has been the best in the comp and has won the flag was the Dees in 2021. Usually it's a team that's sort of sitting a little bit off because they're not getting as focused on as, Collingwood or whatever. So, it's not an awful thing. We just really want to focus on finishing top 4. I hope we only drop 3 games for the rest of the year. If we drop 4, it might be a bit more difficult, but we'll see how we go, because it is a very, very even season. So thanks for watching, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and this has been Yeah The Dees.
And it's just so special for our club, mate, our club.
Lastly, after 57 years of pain, it's coming home.